So let us go through this paper, this year's ethics paper. So if you look at this question paper, what are the observations you can make of this year's ethics paper? First and foremost, in section A, questions are repeated. You can see repeat of questions from previous years in section A. Some of the questions are completely repeated, exactly the same. The second observation you can make is that about this year's paper, you require in-depth knowledge of public administration to answer case studies. To answer all the case studies, you require in-depth knowledge of public administration to answer these case studies. Third observation that we can make here is that it is not emphasizing too much on philosophers. There is not much of emphasis on philosophers. So you don't have to unnecessarily focus on reading hundreds of philosophers. And the fourth observation that we can make is you require two important things, two essential things. First one is second you have to say report on ethics in governance. Second one is second you have to say report on civil services. Almost all the questions were picked up only from these reports, these two important reports. And the last observation we can make of this year's paper is what is required is a simple conceptual clarity, and it does not require any extensive reading. I dare say that this ethics paper does not require more than 1 week to 10 days of preparation. In your entire mains preparation, it does not require more than 1 week to 10 days of preparation. So these are all the observations that we can make looking at this year's paper. Let us go into the questions. As all of you know, you have two sections. One is section A, which tests your conceptual clarity. Section B, case studies, which tests your application abilities, whether you can put your concept into application in real life, especially in civil services. These two are the things which UPSC is looking from you. So let us look at the questions. What are the basic principles of public life? Illustrate any three principles with suitable examples. So if you look at this question, first of all, what you should know what is public life and what are those basic principles. How do we start your answer? We say that human beings are social animals. We are social animals. We are dependent on others for our survival. It is the ethics, these basic principles of ethics that will teach us about how to behave with others, that teach us about how to communicate with others, our relationship with others. And that is what is called public life. Our relationship with others in the society. We have our own private life, individual life. Whatever we do in our private life, you can do whatever you want. There is no limit. But when it comes to public life, in our dealings with others, there are certain principles which you follow. So if you look at it, what are those principles? This is what part of the syllabus also we can say. Basically, we talk about moral values. What are the moral values? The second topic of your syllabus, it talks about attitude and behavior and values. In the topic, you have moral values. These moral values are basically the principles of public life. What are the important principles? You can talk about so many of them. First one is, you can say reverence. That is respecting others. In our public life, we should always make sure that we respect others, irrespective of their position, caste, religion, gender, so on and so forth. This is important for a society like India, which is feudal, which is hierarchical in nature. We must have respect for others. In India, we can see that in our societies, only those people who have money, power, and position are the ones who command respect. Poor people never command any respect from others. So the most important principle is this reverence, respect for others. Second, you can talk about fidelity in relationships. Fidelity, F-I-D-E-L-I-T-Y, fidelity in relationships. That is what we call trustworthiness in relationships. Trustworthiness. This is what I always say. We are human beings. As human beings, we are social animals, and as social animals, we always depend on others for our survival. Human relationships are always, we call them as reciprocal in nature. We have to give something to others. We will take something from others. As human beings, we cannot live all alone. So the entire society, the survival of societies depends on this trust factor. One of the important principles that should guide our public life is fidelity. We must create trust among the people. The basic problem with Indian society at this point of time is trust deficit. Why? Because of increasing selfishness on the part of the people in the society. In the name of promoting their self-interest, they do not mind deceiving others, manipulating others, cheating others. That is the reason why this is another important principle that we must follow in our public life. Next, another important principle that we should also think about is selflessness. We can be selfless. As I said, we should also always help others without expecting anything in return from them. Why? Because as I said again, reciprocal. Human relationships are reciprocal in nature. For example, you are walking on a street and you have seen a person injured, because of accident. What you must do, you must be able to take that person to the hospital and ensure better treatment for him. Because tomorrow, if you are in that position, you have to expect the same thing from others. That is what Mahatma Gandhi always said. He said that always do those things to others which you will be doing to yourself. That is what to do unto those things to others which you will be doing for yourself, which you are expecting from others also. This is another important principle. You should always help the people who are in need. Because tomorrow, when the same need arises for you, you can expect the same thing from others also. You can talk about so many other things. You can talk about so many other principles. You can talk about honesty. You can talk about empathy. You can talk about love and affection. You can talk about all of them, but from the examination point of view, you have to talk about the three most important principles of public life. Why? Because as I said, you start our answer by saying that human beings are social animals and they depend on others for their survival. This is what ethics will be teaching us. Ethics is all about others. Next, what do you understand by the term public servant? Reflect on the expected role of public servant. So this public servant, again, as I said, that these are the things which require theoretical knowledge of public administration. Who is a public servant? Who is a public servant? In broader terms, how do we define a public servant? Any person who works for the welfare of the society. Who has been authorized by the government to work for the welfare of society. Public servant. Who has been authorized by the government. Very simple definition. And if you look at from the government point of view, IPC, Indian Penal Code, defined this term public servant. Who are they? Basically, you can include army. They are maintaining borders. They are ensuring sovereignty of the nation. You can include civil servants. Our civil servants. You can include banking sector professionals. You can include banking sector professionals. You can include police, law and order. You can include police. And you can include these employees of public sector enterprises. All of them are called public servants. Civil servants are different from public servants. That is what you must remember. Civil servants are only, we are talking about those who are engaged in performing these developmental and welfare functions of the government. So that is the reason why civil servants are different from public servant. In public servant category, we can include all of them. All those people who are recognized by the government, who have been authorized by the government to serve the society, people. That is what is called a public servant. And reflect on the expected role of the public servant. What are they are expected to do? What they are expected to do? As I said, every segment of this public servant are expected to perform different functions. In general, what are they expected to perform? The same functions which we talked about the role of the state. They are expected to maintain law and order. They are expected to maintain law and order. They are expected to generate revenues for the government. Income tax officers, customs officers, collection of revenue for the government. They are expected to implement developmental and welfare schemes. They are expected to implement developmental and welfare schemes. Next, they are expected to run public sector enterprises, running of public sector enterprises. Next, they are expected to change, influence public opinion in favor of government, so that developmental welfare schemes can be successful. They are expected to ensure active participation of citizens in development administration. Active participation of citizens in development administration. These are all the functions to be performed by public servants. In fact, here you can include judiciary also. You can include judiciary also. So this is what we say about the role of public servants. They are expected to perform all these functions. The challenge is writing all of them in the very limited time that you have in the main examination. Especially in ethics paper, the basic problem that you encounter is completing the question paper. You can complete the question paper only when you have a prior knowledge of all these things. Very, very important. Next, effective utilization of public funds is crucial to meet developmental goals. Critically examine the reasons for underutilization and misutilization of public funds and their implication. So, the question says that effective utilization of public funds is necessary to meet developmental goals. That is what again we say development administration. What does development administration involve? Development administration involve first formulating programs and projects. Second, allocating finances. Third, implementation of programs and projects. And fourth, evaluation of performance. Evaluation of performance. This is what we say. As I keep on saying, you require a good theoretical knowledge of public administration to answer all the questions. Development administration involves all these things. Now coming back here, the most important thing here is this one, effective utilization of funds, implementation of programs. We should ensure that outlays are transformed into outcomes. We must ensure that outlays are transformed into outcomes. And we say that in India, development administration is a failure because of high levels of corruption. We say that development administration is a failure because of high levels of corruption. The problems are related to utilization of funds. They are related to misallocation of funds. They are related to misuse of funds. Now the question says, critically examine the reasons for underutilization and misutilization of funds and their implication. You can see the question has asked so many things, and again the challenge is to write to answer each and every part of the question. Two things they have asked. One is underutilization of funds. Second one is misutilization of funds. Both of them are different. That is what we must remember. Underutilization means different from misutilization. Give the example. In the year 2016, Smart Cities program, the government allocated 8,000 crores. But the amount of money spent by the state governments was only 167 crores. The budget allocation was 8,000 crores. But the amount of money spent was only 167 crores. This is what is called underutilization of funds. Now the question here is why there is underutilization of funds. Why there is underutilization of funds? Why? Because the government has the tendency to start mega developmental schemes. It has a tendency to start mega developmental schemes without creating proper structures to implement them. Without creating proper administrative structures to implement them. That is most important reason for underutilization of schemes. And the curious case here is that when it comes to development administration in India, the basic problem is not about availability of funds. The basic problem is always about underutilization of funds. You take any of the schemes, it is all about underutilization of funds. Why? Because the governments, successive governments, never really bothered to create proper administrative structures, proper political systems, proper proper rules and regulations to ensure effective utilization of funds. Another important reason why there is misutilization or underutilization of funds is the lack of awareness among the citizens about these programs. Lack of awareness among citizens about these programs. Simply they don't know what are the programs implemented by the government, how much amount of money allocated by the government, and who are the beneficiaries. And this results in what you call misutilization of funds. Why there is misutilization of funds? What are the reasons why we have misutilization of funds? First one is, we don't have any outcome budgets. We don't have any outcome budgets wherein the expenditure is not linked to outcomes. Second, high levels of secrecy in implementation of developmental programs. High levels of secrecy. The beneficiaries who are supposed to benefit don't know what are the benefits they are supposed to get. Give example here again. Third one is, as I said, the lack of awareness among the people, among the beneficiaries. Lack of awareness among the beneficiaries about these schemes. Give the example. On an average, any Indian village is expected to get the benefits of 350 schemes, central and state government schemes. How many of those villages know about all the 350 schemes? That is what another reason why there is misallocation. Fourth, complete absence of accountability mechanisms. Bureaucracy in India is morally responsible but not legally accountable. They are only morally responsible but not legally accountable to realize outcomes. That is what another reason why we have so much of a misutilization of funds, lot of corruption. And after writing all these things, you have to come out with solutions. The solution is very simple. The government must ensure good governance in implementation of developmental and welfare schemes. What is this good governance? Participation, transparency, accountability, decentralization. All these things should be there in implementation. Next, non-performance of duty by a public servant is a form of corruption. Do you agree with this view? Justify your answer. I remember, when we discussed corruption in our classes also, I said that corruption is not only about taking bribes. It is also about not performing your duties. Not performing your duties. In India, again, if you look at all the questions, all of them are interrelated. The almost answer will be the similar answer you will be writing, if not exactly the same answer for all these questions. Okay. The basic reason why, as we keep on saying, welfare administration in India is a failure. Why it is a failure? Because, as we have said, our bureaucracy never takes their job seriously, neither seriously nor sincerely. Corruption, the general opinion about corruption is that taking bribes is called corruption. This is only one form of corruption. This is only one form of corruption. Taking bribes or indulging in nepotism or favoritism. This is only one form of corruption. The most important form of corruption is non-performance. Non-performance of duty. That is where the problem with a country like India is. Why this non-performance? That is what you have to address the question, issue. Why there is non-performance on the part of public servants in India, and what should be done? Why our public servants are underperforming? They never perform to their maximum possible extent. They never think about expanding their capabilities, improving their skills. Why? That is what the question. Two important reasons here. Two important reasons. Why? First one is their performance in terms of implementing developmental and welfare schemes is not a factor that will influence their career advancement. That is, their promotions, transfers, suspensions, postings do not depend on their performance. As I keep on saying, the question paper looks simple, but it requires a lot of precision, a lot of what you call specific knowledge of public administration. It requires. And that is the reason why people normally don't get marks in ethics paper. Why? Because they think that ethics is about hundreds of philosophers. They read 100 philosophers, they become 101 philosopher. Then they start thinking, what is UPSC? What is exam? Life is full of myth. Okay. So that is where the problem. That is where the problem. And as I said, they read hundreds of pages, of all these philosophers, right from Greek philosopher Aristotle to India's present #1 philosopher Rahul Gandhi, who said that poverty is a state of mind. Okay. So that is where the problem is. When UPSC included this paper in our syllabus, their objective is not to test whether you have the knowledge of all these philosophers or not. Their objective is to see whether you can understand their philosophies and most importantly use them in civil services. That is what UPSC is testing. That is the reason why if you look at in the last few years, all the questions are tended to be more practical aspects of public administration. You are going to be administrator, you are not going to be physicist or a mathematician. You are going to be IAS officer. You should know about practical aspects of administration. That is what UPSC is testing. And this is the reason why this year, if you look at entire ethics paper, as well as a polity governance paper, it is full of technical aspects of public administration only. So coming back here, first reason is why, because their career advancement is not dependent on their performance. Second reason why they are underperforming, because in a parliamentary democracy, bureaucracy is not directly accountable to people. They are not directly accountable to people for their performance. There is no accountability towards citizens for their performance. And what do we say? They are only morally responsible. They are only morally responsible but not legally accountable. That results in their underperformance. The question they will be asking, civil servants in India, the question they will be asking is, why should we perform? UPSC is asking, they are underperforming. The question they will ask is, why should we perform? Why should they perform? Because their promotions do not depend on their performance. Because they are not accountable to the people. Why should they perform? What is the incentive? What is the motivation for them to perform? That is the reason why underperformance is the norm. Performance is the exception of public servants in India. Why? Because we continued with the same colonial structures wherein the Britishers made sure that civil servants are accountable to their higher levels in the hierarchy. And they made sure that civil servants are never made accountable to the people. That is what the solution you have to write towards the end. You have to implement governance reforms wherein civil servants should be made accountable to the people for their performance. How? Through citizen charters, through RTI, through social audits. And then change implement civil services reforms in terms of promotions, transfers and everything else. Make it mandatory that their performance in their particular position should be the basis of their promotions, transfers and postings. So that underperformance can become the exception and performance the norm. Next question. What is meant by the term constitutional morality? How does one uphold constitutional morality? If you happen to read newspapers in the last 1 year or so, this term constitutional morality has been used. It has been used by our judiciary more often than not. So what is this constitutional morality? Before that, we should know what is constitution and what is morality separately, then we can combine both of them. If you look at that is what again your knowledge of ethics should come into help here, theoretical knowledge of ethics. We say that there are so many sources of ethics. There are so many sources of ethics in any society. What are the important sources of ethics that we study? What are the sources of ethics? First we say God and religion. In any society it is the God and religion that the most important source of ethics. Then we say that in democratic societies it is the government that provides ethical guidance to the people. Then we talk about so many other things. But from our question point of view, this is very important. So it is the government that decides what is good and what is bad for the people. In a democratic polity, the most important source of ethics is the government. And that is the reason why we say that legality and morality. These are the terms which we use while talking about constitutional ethics. So what is this constitution? The constitution is a legal document. It is a legal document that defines the relationship between the state and the citizens. It is a legal document that defines the relationship between the state and citizens. It is also a legal document that defines the powers of the different organs of the state. When we discuss polity governance paper day after tomorrow, I will be repeating all these things because half the questions in polity governance paper are on the basis of this only. Here you have to remember our important philosopher, Thomas Hobbes, a British philosopher. Thomas Hobbes. What did he say? He said that under normal circumstances, it is the morality that should define legality. It is the morality that should define legality. That means, what is right and wrong, what is right and wrong morally should become what is legal and illegal. What is right and wrong should define what is legal and what is illegal. Legal and what is illegal. It is the morals that should be the basis of legality. But Hobbes, he said that when the state becomes too powerful, It is the legality that defines morality in most other societies. It is the legality that defines morality. What do you mean by that? When the constitution says that something is legal, it automatically becomes moral also. For example, in our constitution, in our rules and regulations, capital punishment is legal. So we think that it is also moral. And similarly, you can give the other example. If you say that betting is illegal, it becomes immoral. In countries like UK, USA, betting is legal. It also becomes moral. So this legal document, constitution, constitution provides all the rules, regulations and provisions regarding how the country should function. But this legal document should always be functioning on the basis of what is called morality. This legal document functioning should always be on the basis of what is called morality. As I said that the laws, according to Thomas Hobbes, they can be either legal, or they can be moral, or they can be immoral, or they can be amoral also. The laws, rules and regulations formulated by the government, or they can be moral, sometimes they can be immoral, sometimes they are amoral also. Can you name those laws which are immoral? For example, prohibition is there in one state, it is illegal and immoral. It is not there in other states, it becomes legal and moral. Yes? In Bihar, I think there is a prohibition now. In Gujarat, it has been there for a long period of time. In those states, if you are drinking, it is illegal and immoral. In other states, come out of the borders, if you are drinking, it is legal as well as moral. So that is what, sometimes there is so much of confusion regarding this constitutional laws, rules and regulations. That is when you take the help of morality to interpret legality. That is what we call constitutional morality. Constitutional morality. This is the term that has been used by our judiciary in recent times, to expand the scope of judicial review. There are so many judgments which are based on what is called the concept of constitutional morality, which have become the basis of Supreme Court judgments. For example, Supreme Court judgment in the case of Shabarimala, when Supreme Court has said that women should be allowed to enter into the temple. It is based on what we call constitutional morality. If you look at the constitution, fundamental rights, right to equality, people should not be discriminated on the basis of their gender. But whereas in this, in a temple, Shabarimala, the discrimination takes place on the basis of gender. So Supreme Court interpreted the constitution from a moral basis and has said that this cultural practice of Shabarimala temple management is wrong. Similarly, Supreme Court judgment in those surrogacy, Supreme Court judgment in suicide, then a Supreme Court judgment in this what is that rule 370, 377, 377 only, or where a Supreme Court has said that yes, sexual orientation is not a crime. These are all based on what is called constitutional morality. They are all based on constitutional morality. Supreme Court nowadays is willing to go beyond established rules and regulations in the Constitution and interpret them on the basis of the higher principles of morality. That is what we say. And this is where again you talk about another important philosopher. There is this philosopher called Thomas Aquinas, who said that when there is a conflict between primary and secondary laws of nature, you should always give importance to primary laws of nature. That is the reason why Supreme Court is interpreting all these laws, rules and regulations from the point of view of primary laws of nature. Nature does not differentiate between man and woman. That is the reason why Supreme Court has said that when Shabarimala temple management said that they would not allow women, it is wrong. Whenever there is conflict, you have to take the help of philosophers when you are writing these kind of questions. Next, explain the basic principles of citizen status movement and bring about its importance. Yes. Oh, okay, sorry. What is meant by a crisis of conscience? How does it manifest in public domain? The same question was asked 3 times in the last 7 years. Repeated. Of course, to maintain consistency, UPSC continued with spelling mistakes also. So, because the problem with the ethics paper is that the syllabus is so less. You have to ask the same kind of questions all the time. That's why I said that it does not require more than 1 week or 10 days of preparation. So coming back here, what is a crisis of conscience? This is what we say. What really differentiates human beings from animals is this conscience. We have the ability to think. This ability to think helps us to differentiate between what is good and what is bad. It is ability to think help us to differentiate between what is good and what is bad. It is our conscience. In the earlier question, I said that there are important sources of ethics. One of the important sources of ethics is human conscience. It is our conscience that helps us to differentiate between what is good and what is bad. It is our, that is why we say that we can deceive anyone else in the world. But when you stand in front of mirror and look at yourself into mirror and ask the question, what you have done is right or wrong, can you deceive yourself? You cannot deceive yourself because you are conscious. And that is the reason why we say that, that is what we study in ethics paper. That is why we say that the moment we silence our conscience, the moment we kill our conscience, there is no difference between human beings and animals. That is the reason why we have so many crimes that are being committed in our society. Why? Because we behave like animals, by silencing our conscience. When you are cheating others, deceiving others, indulging in sexual exploitation, killing others, causing injuries to others, this is when you kill your conscience. You behave like animals. Coming back here, the question here is, what is crisis of conscience? What is the crisis of conscience? What does it mean? It means that, you are in a dilemma. You are in doubt regarding what you should do in a particular situation. What you should do in a specific situation, a particular situation. Why? Because the problem with ethics is that, the problem with values is that they are not absolute. They are always relative. They are always relative. In a particular situation, there is nothing like this is the concrete solution. For example, you are writing in the examination. The examiner is not there in the room, and your friend sitting next to you is willing to show his answer sheet so that he can write from his answer sheet. And if you don't do it, you will fail. If you do it, it is morally and legally wrong. What you do? What will you do? That is what is called the crisis of conscience. Here there is no crisis here. We know. We know what to do. Right? This is what is called the crisis of conscience. Whenever, you always face this kind of ethical dilemmas. Similarly, you are a civil servant. You know that the order given by your superior is morally and legally, ethically wrong. If you don't implement it, he can suspend you. If you implement it, it is wrong. Crisis of conscience. What will you do under those circumstances? As we study all the time, the problem is that there is no absolute true or complete false. Everything is relative in this world. And that is where we find this kind of a crisis. Because you are always torn between self-interest and societal welfare. You are always in this conflict zone between what is good for you and what is good for us from the society point of view. And this is where you find the crisis. And How does it manifest in public domain? As I said, from the point of view of civil servants, how does it manifest? From the point of view of civil servants and from the point of view of a society in general also. As I said, first one is self-interest versus societal welfare. Second one is interest of organization, interest of organization versus that of people in general. For example, as a civil servant, should you be working for the government or for the people? Should you be working for the government or for the people? Or third, short-term benefit or versus long-term, cost. For example, constructing a dam might be useful for today, but in tomorrow, it can result in environmental degradation. Crisis of conscience. Similarly, honesty versus integrity. Should you be speak truth all the time, or should you be looking at protecting the interests of your organization? You are a district collector. Huge amount of corruption had taken place in implementation of NREGA. Should you be speaking truth and tell the public about what happened, or should you be covering up the entire issue under the carpet in the name of public interest? These are all the crises that you always face. And how to find solutions to this crisis of conscience? How to find solution? Always think about the interests of the society. We should always put the interests of society at large above the interests of ourselves as well as that of organization. That is what ethics teaches. Next, explain the basic principles of citizen charters movement and bring out its importance. What are the basic principles of citizen charters? Again, what are the basic principles? Why the citizen charters had come into existence? So you start your answer with why do we need citizen charters? Why do we need citizen charters? As we always talk about this, it is a representative democracy along with colonial bureaucracy. Representative democracy along with colonial bureaucracy had made sure that there is no participation of citizens in development process. Representative democracy and colonial bureaucracy made sure that there is no scope for citizen participation in development, which resulted in failure of development administration in India. Lakhs of crores of rupees of public money is spent on welfare administration without any accountability mechanisms. It is spent on welfare administration without any accountability mechanisms. And that is the reason why these citizen charters had come into existence. They had come into existence to overcome the weaknesses of development administration. So what are the basic principles of citizen charters? This background music is good. So whenever you find in films climax, you need this kind of background music also. Okay. So coming back here, is it a ringtone? Alarm. Okay, very good. You are revealing all your secrets in public domain. This is the time you get up normally. So coming back here, what are the basic principles? First one is citizen participation in governance. As I said, in representative democracy, citizen participation in governance is restricted to voting in elections only. For the next 5 years, you have only electoral dictatorship. Second, to transform our representative democracy to participative democracy. To transform our representative democracy into participative democracy. Third, again, to transform moral responsibility of our bureaucracy into legal accountability. To transform our moral responsibility of bureaucracy into legal accountability. Fourth, to overcome weaknesses of parliamentary democracy, wherein bureaucracy is not directly accountable to the people. The objective is to make bureaucracy directly accountable to the people for their performance. To make bureaucracy directly accountable to the people for their performance. Fifth, to improve quality of service delivery mechanisms. Quality of service delivery mechanisms. Sixth, to eliminate corruption. To eliminate corruption. These are all the basic principles of citizen charters to eliminate corruption. These are the basic principles, and that is the reason why we say that citizen charters are extremely important to realize two important objectives: citizen participation in governance and making bureaucracy accountable to the citizens for their performance. This is what you have to write. Next, there is a view that Official Secrets Act is an obstacle to the implementation of RTI. Do you agree with the view? Discuss. So, again, I will start my answer with the objective of RTI. What is the objective of RTI? What is the spirit behind implementation of RTI? What is the spirit behind implementation of RTI? That means you don't know. Okay. What is the spirit? In democracy, people are sovereign. In democracy, people are sovereign. And people elected governments work for people. People elected governments work for people. They derive their power. People elected governments derive their power from the legitimacy given by people through electoral process. From legitimacy given by people through electoral process. And it is the people have the right to know, they have the right to know what their governments are doing for their welfare. Here people are sovereign, governments are subordinate to the people. That is what democracy is all about. And this sovereignty can be exercised by the people only when they know how their governments are functioning in terms of policy formulation, implementation and everything else. In terms of allocation of resources, in terms of implementation of welfare schemes. That is the spirit behind RTI. Now, once you look at know the spirit behind RTI, you can easily make out whether Official Secrets Act is an obstacle in implementation of RTI or not. Again, here I will take the help of a second YASI report on RTI. What did second YASI say? When you are writing these kind of answers, it is always better to criticize the government with the help of a second YASI. Second YASI has said that this Official Secrets Act is antithesis to RTI. Antithesis. Antithesis to RTI. And it has said that the objective of RTI is to ensure transparency. The objective of RTI is to ensure transparency, whereas the objective of OSA is to ensure secrecy in administration. And it has said that both of them cannot go together. Can good and bad go together? Can good and bad go together? Can RTI and OSA go together? Obviously not. It is against the letter and spirit of RTI. Why? Because, as I said, this OSA was framed during the colonial times. During the colonial times, during the British times, 1923. It was framed during the colonial times, wherein the objective of the British government was to hide information from the people. Why? Because the British government was highly exploitative in nature. If ordinary people come to know about the exploitative nature of the British government, they can revolt against the government. That is the reason why British government had passed OSA. After independence, there is no place for OSA. Why? Because after independence, we are ruling ourselves and we should know what the governments are doing. But there is some amount of information which has to be kept secretive. That information which is related to national security. That is the reason why second years recommended that OSA should be removed and it should be replaced with the National Security Act as suggested by Shourie Committee. It should be replaced with National Security Act. All the information which is related to national security can be part of National Security Act. Rest of the information should be made public. Why? Because it is the transparency that can ensure accountability. That is what you have to write. It says that, do you agree with this view? Discuss. Yes, you agree because second ERC has suggested this. On the other hand, if you say that, yes, I agree, the government is highly exploitative in nature, there should be revolution in the country, your answers will be sent to Naxal headquarters. And you will be given posting by Indian Naxal Service. So you have to be careful while writing answers. You cannot get emotional. You cannot say that since independence we have only highly exploitative governments. You cannot say that the only thing that has changed after independence is white man's rule was replaced with brown man's rule. You cannot say that the only thing that is common to all our administration is exploitation. You cannot write all those things. Don't get emotional. That is the reason why write your answers in a very highly unemotional. That is the next question also, emotional intelligence. Right. Next, what do you understand by probity in governance? Based on your understanding of the term, suggest measures for ensuring probity in government. Again, this question was repeated 3 times. This is the 4th time. If you have written mains previously, you can write that please refer to my answer in 2015 mains paper. Give me marks also. God bless you. If they are repeating the question, what will you do? So, what is the answer to the question? What is this probity in governance? As we discussed, we say that it is a multi-dimensional concept which involves structural as well as behavioral aspects. It is a multi-dimensional concept which involves structural and behavioral aspects of civil servants. What are they? First one, you talk about discipline. Second, professionalism. Second one is professionalism. Third one is efficiency. Fourth one is empathy. Fifth one is selflessness. Sixth one is conduct, rules and regulations. Civil service conduct rules and regulations. Seventh one is selflessness. Did I mention that? Okay. Okay. Empathy, selflessness. Seventh one is you can say love and affection. Eighth one is honesty and integrity. Honesty and integrity. These are all part of what we call the term probity in governance, which talks about the structural as well as behavioral aspects. For example, you are a district collector. As a district collector, you are reaching your office at 1 p.m. The normal timings are morning 9 a.m. And you are reaching your office at 1 p.m. What about your subordinates? They will reach at 12:55. That is the reason why professionalism, discipline is a part of probity. Recently, you have seen in newspapers, this Madras Chief Justice was transferred to Meghalaya court and she resigned also. What are one of the reasons why the Supreme Court had transferred? because of probity in governance. She was unprofessional in her attitude. She would sit in High Court only up to 12 noon. After that, she would leave. Unprofessional attitude. Unprofessional attitude. Second, she had close connections with political families. Corruption, honesty. Close connections with political families. Third, she had purchased properties and she has not informed the government. Conduct rules and regulations. That was the reason why she was transferred. Of course, people in Tamil Nadu, they had become emotional and they started agitations. That is what you think about only people from Tamil Nadu. Okay. So that is the reason why probity in governance is very, very important. You must be professional in your attitude, highly disciplined, follow rules and regulations, be a role model for others. Then behavioral aspects. You must have honesty, empathy, selflessness, love and affection. These are the things which are needed. How to ensure probity in governance? That is what we say. We can ensure probity in governance through code of conduct and code of ethics. The objective of code of conduct is to prevent negative behavior, and the objective of code of ethics is to promote positive values. That is what about probity in governance. Next, come to the other questions. Emotional intelligence is the ability to make your emotions work for you instead of against you. Do you agree with the view? Discuss. This is what I remember again, those who attend our ethics classes, they know. Emotional intelligence should be all about your strengths, not about your weaknesses. If you say that I am a highly emotional person, if you say that I will get angry all the time or I will cry always, that is your weakness. It cannot be your strength. For example, you are the chairman of ISRO and you start crying very loudly. Stupid. And much worse spectacle was the great Prime Minister consoling him also. What nonsense is this? Right? These are the things which you see in kindergarten schools when the teacher consoles the baby student. You don't expect these kind of things from leaders of the country. Do you? Obviously not. These are the things I don't know whether to laugh or cry looking at those kind of images. And then media reporting that our Prime Minister did a great job by giving his shoulder for this person to cry. This is utter stupid nonsense. And then another thing is that they are saying that the experiment is 98% successful because the Land Rover stopped 2 kilometers. Either it is successful or not, accept it. That is what tomorrow we will be discussing as part of essays also. You must accept your weaknesses rather than riding rough shoulder over all our weaknesses. You have to accept it. It is not successful means it is not, because you conduct so many experiments. Not everything has to be successful or not. It has to be, not everything has to be successful. You need that kind of emotional intelligence to carry on and find out the weaknesses and rectify your mistakes, rather than saying that it is 98% successful. It is like saying that you are half pregnant. There is a saying in English, either you are pregnant or not. You cannot be half pregnant. Similarly, you cannot say that it is 98% successful. That is why, sometimes when you look at our country, you don't know whether to laugh or cry. When the people in positions of power, they do these kind of silly things, which you do not expect even from kindergarten students also. Right, coming back, let us look at the question. Emotional intelligence is the ability to make your emotions work for you instead of against you. As I said, this is what? Exactly, this is what? Your emotions should be your strength, cannot be your weakness or weakness? That is what the question says. It should be your strength. If you are a sensitive person, that means you feel for the sufferings of other people. That should be your strength. It cannot be your weakness. Other people cannot blackmail you. Saying that I am suffering so much, you have to give money to me. That is working against you. Similarly, you get angry. You have to use your anger as an emotion, in a constructive manner. When you see that your subordinates are not working properly, you have to use your anger, to tell what you are feeling about them, their performance. You should always use your emotions in a positive and constructive manner. They should be your strengths. They cannot be your weakness. As I said, not all the time we can be successful in life, in whatever we do. That is where you must have that kind of perseverance, ability to carry on. We should always have what we call positive emotions. We cannot have negative emotions. Emotions can be either positive or negative. For example, being happy, positive emotion. Being sad all the time, negative. Having a peace of mind, positive emotions. Getting angry at all the time, negative emotions. So these emotions should be your strength, but can never be your weakness. That is what the question says. And you must use your emotions, to work for you rather than working against you. As I said, if you start crying all the time, you will not command respect from your subordinates. Yesterday, I think there was this article in Indian Express or Times of India, wherein one of the topmost scientists from ISRO had questioned Shivan. He said that what kind of nonsense is this? Let us accept the fact that it has not succeeded and find out the problems why, find out the reasons why it has not succeeded, rather than conducting meetings and trying to cover up the whole issue. That should not what a leader is expected to do. A leader is a person who should be able to lead, who should be able to take the responsibility, who is willing to take the risks, and who is willing to shield his subordinates. That is what we call positive emotions. On the other hand, trying to find excuses and coming out with reasons why it has not worked. The same is the problem with the political executive also. What happens is that they never accept the reality. They always come out with excuses. For example, when the auto sector in India, auto industry is under recession, our finance minister has said that millennials are not are not willing to buy new cars. They are using Ola and Uber. That is the reason why we have a recession. The prices of vegetables are coming down because everyone is eating from Swiggy and Zomato. So you can come out with all these kind of excuses. That is where your emotional intelligence, it is all about accepting our mistakes and willing to rectify your mistakes. And it is all about using our emotions in a constructive, positive manner to develop ourselves and also to provide guidance to others. They should not come in the way of your own development. That is what the question is all about. Next, what do each of the following quotations mean to you? An unexamined life is not worth living. Socrates. Again, you can easily predict all these statements given by quotations given by UPSC. Every year one quotation will be there from Mahatma Gandhi. As I keep on saying all the time in our ethics classes, Gandhi has quotations for everything under the sun, above the sun, and including the sun. So UPSC will not be looking for quotations for the next 5,000 years, because Gandhi has more than 1 lakh quotations for everything. So if at all you have to prepare for this, go to internet and search for Gandhi's quotations. The second is always there in the first quotation only, every year. Now look at the first one, Socrates. An unexamined life is not worth living. So what does it mean? What do you mean by an unexamined life is not worth living? What is the meaning? I remember, I think you have got also, in the last year on our test series ethics also, I gave the same quotation. Intelligent people think alike. UPSC and myself. Okay. Okay, coming back here. What do you mean by that? An unexamined life is not worth living. What do you mean by that? Without goals. Unexamined means what? Unexamined means where you did not face any challenges or troubles or different kinds of situations. In a life where you do not find challenges or troubles or different kind of situations, it is not worth living. It is not worth living. Why? Because growth and development depends directly on these things. As a person, our growth and development depends on how do we cope up with the challenges, how do we cope up with new situations, how do we cope up with the troubles, problems in our life. Every moment of our life we have to challenge ourselves. We have to take up new initiatives. We have to face new situations to see how much improvement we have made compared to the past. The only thing that we say that is constant in this world is change. And we must change ourselves to the changing circumstances. We must change for betterment. How can we change for better? Only when we face challenging circumstances. That is the reason why what we say is that, again I will give you the example of civil servants in India. Why they are not efficient? Why they are not efficient? They don't face any professional challenges. Because they perform what is called routine, mundane tasks, which does not require any kind of creativity on their part. They do not want to take risks. It is as simple as that one. The first thing you talk to any civil servant is that, what are the rules and regulations? He will always go by rules and regulations. That is the reason why we say that civil services in India, they are efficient but not effective. Operation is successful and patient is dead. That is what we say. Why? Because they don't want to take up challenges. They don't want to face new situations. That is what in general about people also. That is the reason why, what is the reason why the difference between developed countries like America or developing countries like India. In India, people always prefer stability in everything that they do. Change is not at all welcomed in our society. It is not at all welcomed. We always prefer status quo. That is the reason why our life becomes completely sedentary. It becomes completely useless. That is what. You should always take up new challenges. You should always aim for the sky. That is what they say. When you aim for the sky, at least you can reach the treetop. And what do? We always look for underground. Okay. That is what. Okay. That is why we say that as long as there is certainty, regarding future, we will never develop. It is as simple as that one. That is the reason why civil servants in India are not efficient. Why? Because once you get into the service for the next 35 years, you will be there in service. What is the reason why private sector is more efficient? There is so much of insecurity, uncertainty. They face challenges on a day-to-day basis. They come out with solutions. They come out with innovations. Sometimes they fail. Sometimes they succeed. But they will not stop facing those challenges. That is what Socrates has said. An unexamined life is not worth living at all. Very, very important. We must make ourselves flexible. That is the reason why I said that once they get into civil services, they become what you call status quo, moribund, and they become completely docile. They are not creative. They are not innovative. Why? Because there is no need for them. Because they don't have to improve their performance. Because they don't have to worry about their career progression. In the private sector, why they are efficient? Because every day they have to face challenges. The organization gives them challenges, saying that this is what you have to achieve. That is where you learn so many things also, whether it is life or career or anything else. That is when only you can develop. For example, Siddhartha, who was the prince, he had the entire kingdom at his feet. He did not like it. He left it. He went into forests. He wanted to find out the essence of life. in the process he became Gautam Buddha. That is what challenging yourself. He wanted to challenge himself to find out about what is the essence of life. Mahatma Gandhi, he challenged himself, to see whether his two important weapons, truth and non-violence, can help him in succeeding in life. When he opted for non-violence, everyone made fun of him. But he believed in this peace and non-violence, which ultimately led to India getting independence also. He challenged himself. That is where, the life becomes much more worthwhile. Since independence, we have seen in so many rich people, since the beginning of civilization you take, so many rulers are there. So many mighty rulers are there. Why don't we talk about them? We talk about only either someone like Gautam Buddha or Mahatma Gandhi or Mother Teresa. Why? Because they challenged themselves. They faced other situations and they proved themselves. They put themselves to critical examination on a daily basis. That is where they made their life also worth living. Next, a man is but the product of his thoughts. What he thinks, he becomes. This is what we say all the time. Mahatma Gandhi also says the same thing. Again, this is what Immanuel Kant, one of the important philosophers, also talked about. He defined goodness in terms of good intentions. What really matters? What is the barometer to evaluate this concept of goodness? In terms of your intentions, in terms of your thoughts. This is what we study in deontological ethics. People like Immanuel Kant and Mahatma Gandhi are the proponents of this ethics. What do they say? They say that if your thoughts are good, you will select the right kind of instruments, and the outcome of your actions will always be good. Outcome of your actions will be good. Everything depends on this. That is the reason why Immanuel Kant, he said that goodness is defined in terms of goodwill. Goodwill. Your thoughts. Goodwill. So good intentions. A man is but the product of his thoughts. What he thinks, he becomes. If you think like Jesus Christ, you will become Jesus Christ. If you think like Adolf Hitler, you will become Adolf Hitler. It is as simple as that one. If you think like Gautam Buddha, you can become Gautam Buddha. If you think like Mother Teresa, you will become Mother Teresa. It is as simple as that one. What he thinks, he becomes. If you are thinking about power all the time, you will become Adolf Hitler, dictator. If you think about appropriating more power unto yourself, you will become Hitler. You will be responsible for world wars also. And on the other hand, if you, as I said, if you think like Jesus Christ or Mahatma Gandhi, you will become like them. That is what Mahatma Gandhi has said. Everything depends on our thought process. In the beginning also, as we have said, the most important source of ethics is our conscience. Our inner self that will help us to decide what is good and what is bad. This is what Mahatma Gandhi has said. As I said, your actions as well as outcome of your actions depend on your thoughts. Give the example, take the case of politicians. There is huge amount of divergence between what they think, what they say and what they do. What you call it as intellectual dishonesty. What is the reason why a country like India is underdeveloped? Why? Because, as Mahatma Gandhi has talked about, one of the 7 sins, politics without principles. All the politicians have only one thing that they are concerned about, how to reach positions of power and stay in those positions of power for a very long period of time. They are not concerned about people. They are only what you call power mongers. That is the reason why Mahatma Gandhi has said that we must clean our thought process. We must get rid of negative intentions. We must get rid of negative emotions. We must get rid of bad thoughts. Then automatically you will become a purified soul. What is called Mahatma. Mahatma means Mahan plus Atma, a noble soul, a purified soul. That is why this is very, very important. Next, where there is righteousness in the heart, there is beauty in the character. Where there is beauty in the character, there is harmony in the home. When there is harmony in the home, there is order in the nation. When there is order in the nation, there is peace in the world. The same thing. You can say that, please refer to my previous answer. Give me marks also, because you have to write the same answer. First of all, as we said, this is what Swami Vivekananda also has said. What did he say, Vivekananda? He said that I always prefer a person with a kind heart. At any point of time, always prefer a person with a kind heart than an intelligent mind or brain. Why? Because intelligence can be used either for good or bad. But who will tell you how to use your intelligence? Your heart. It is your heart. When God has created human beings, what did He do? When He created human beings, He had given us the power to think, analyze, and to take decisions. The difference between human beings and animals. He had given us the power to think, analyze, and take decisions. And mostly what we have done, we have used this power only to manipulate, exploit, cheat others. Why? Because we have forgotten another part of our body which He had given to us, that is heart. It is where our emotions reside. We have forgotten the fact that we have to think from the core of our heart rather than mind. That is where the problem. If at all, if we have to pray to God, the only prayer that we can have to God is, please change our hearts. Make them much more humane. Fill our hearts with love and affection. Take away other negative emotions, jealousy, revenge, prejudices from our heart. Fill our heart with positive emotions. Let us feel empathy for those who are suffering. Let our heart beat for those people who are suffering. That is the only prayer we can make to God. Why? Because unfortunately in this world we have so many intelligent people, but they don't have kind heart. They use their intelligence to only exploit others, manipulate others, to realize their selfish interests. That is where this quotation can help us. If you have a good heart, automatically you become a good human being. As I said, as we study, those who have attended our ethics classes, this is what I said all the time. Goodness is the core of everything. If you are a good human being with a kind heart, he will be a good citizen, good family man, good civil servant, good politician, good lawyer, good doctor. The basis of everything is goodness. And that is the reason why, if at all when we pray to God, change our hearts, do bypass surgery, and give us some amount of love. We are not that bad people. Only thing is that we have forgotten our basic emotions. In this rat race for materialistic comforts, we have forgotten the fact that we are human beings also. That is where the problem. So this is what you have to write for these kind of questions. Next, come to the case studies. Again, if you look at these case studies, this year UPSC has again completely changed the template of case studies. Again, UPSC is looking from you very good theoretical and practical knowledge of public administration to answer case studies. You are heading the rescue operations in a rain affected area area affected by severe natural calamity. Thousands of people are rendered homeless and deprived of food, drinking water and other basic amenities. Rescue work has been disrupted due to heavy rainfall and damaged supply routes. The local people are sitting with anger against the delayed limited rescue operations. When your team reached the affected area, the people there heckled and even assailed some of the team members. One of your team members is even severely injured. Faced with this crisis, some team members plead with you to call off the operations, fearing threats to their life. In such trying circumstances, what will be your response? Examine the qualities of public servants which are required to manage the situations. And incidentally, the same case study I have given this year in our case studies. I think you have got that paper also. You can see that one. 15th July, you can see. You are in charge of rescue operations in a severely flood hit area. Thousands of people are stranded in deep waters in their homes without food and drinking water. Because of rough topography and heavy rainfall, the rescue operation is very slow. When you reach stranded people, they heckle and assault you. UPSC copied not line by line or word by word, alphabet by alphabet. That is the problem. We don't have intellectual property rights. Right? But as I always tell in my ethics classes also, it is very easy to predict ethics case studies. That is the reason why when others say that they want to do 200, 300 case studies, I said that when UPSC is asking only 6 case studies, do only 6 of them for practice, because UPSC will ask the same 6 only. Okay. You can see the exact, even other case study, one more case study also, exactly the same case study. Because UPSC and myself, both of us take from same sources. When we do it, it is called inspiration. When others do it, it's called copying. So, coming back here, so what is the problem here? The problem here is that regarding disaster management. Disaster management is one of the important functions of civil servants. As we say that in India, every natural disaster is always inevitably followed by man-made disasters. Why? Because one of the important activities of disaster management, response, has always been a failure. That is why we call it in India, disaster management in India is called disaster of management. Disaster of management. Why? Because of the bureaucracy. Bureaucracy with their status quoist approach, neither have the skills nor knowledge nor commitment, attitude to perform these functions. So the case study says that you are responsible for providing relief. Your team could not reach you because of the topography and everything else. Local people are stranded there for 3-4 days. Obviously, you cannot expect them to behave like Mahatma Gandhi. They are extremely angry because nobody reached them. So when your team went there, they started abusing you, and one of your team members was also severely injured. Your team members do not want to continue with the rescue operations. What will you do under those circumstances? So here are 2 important issues. One is protecting your team members. That is, as the leader of the team, you have to take care of the safety and security of your team members. Second, again, as a leader of the disaster relief team, you must provide immediate relief to victims also. You must provide immediate relief to the victims also. So you have to realize these 2 important objectives. Now, what are the options in front of you here? What are the options in front of you? Only 2 options. One is call off the rescue operations. Second, continue with them. Your team members are demanding calling of rescue operations because they are facing threat to their life. If you call off these rescue operations, what is the merit and what is the demerit? You will be able to protect the lives of your team members. You will be able to protect the lives of your team members. What is the demerit? Your actions are not either legal or moral. You cannot call off the operations. Why? Because, as a civil servant, as a public servant, you must provide relief to the people. It is not moral also, because everyone is looking for your team to provide relief. On the other hand, when you continue with the operations, what is the merit and what is the demerit when you continue with the operations? The merit here is that obviously you will be able to provide relief to the people, their timely relief to the victims. The demerit here is that you will lose the confidence of your followers. They lose confidence in you. They believe that you are no longer able to protect their interests by forcing them to go there and work. By forcing them to go there and work, they lose confidence in your leadership abilities. So, if you look at both these options, this is what is called win-loss situation. What is called win-loss situation? So, you have to come out with a solution which is called a win-win situation. This is all ethics case studies are about coming out with this win-win solutions only. So, what will you do? What are you expected to do? What will you do? First of all, you have to think about providing safety and security to your team members. You will request the local police to provide safety and security to your team members. You will request the local police to provide a second, emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence. You will motivate. One of the important aspects of emotional intelligence is motivation. You will motivate your team members to join the relief operations by explaining to them their duty towards the nation. Public servants, patriotism, service to the nation. You will motivate them. You say that you must be willing to sacrifice. Give the example of army. They are fighting near the borders. They are willing to sacrifice their life also. Here in this case, some kind of injury should not prevent them, because ultimately you have to serve the society. You will motivate them. Third, what will you do? What you have to do is that people are restless there. So what will you do? You will take the help of local political leaders, media, NGOs, and civil society organizations as part of your rescue team. Why? Why? Because the local politician, people know that person, local MLA or MP or anyone else. He would be able to handle the people better. That is what we again say, emotional intelligence. He will be able to handle the people better. He can go and tell the people there that everything will be fine. The government is taking care of their interests. They will be getting all the timely relief within a very short period of time. They must maintain peace and calm so that they can get the relief. Then you can take the local media also with you. Why? Because the media nowadays can influence the public opinion. Media should tell the people also how difficult it is for these rescue teams to go to the areas and provide relief on a timely basis. And then you take local NGOs and civil society organizations. Why? Because this is what we study in disaster management. The difference between professional administrators, that is bureaucracy, and NGOs and civil society organizations is that these NGOs and civil society organizations, they work with passion. Whereas for you, it is profession. As a leader of a disaster relief team, it is your profession. Whereas NGOs and civil sector organizations, it is their passion. That is the reason why they do not mind facing any kind of challenges also. Service motive. When you take them along with you, they can also help you in relief and rehabilitation operations. And then, as I said, you will also be taking police with you so that they can provide protection to your people. In this manner, as I said, you are coming out with what is called win-win solution. Win-win solution, wherein you are protecting your team members and at the same time also performing your functions as a relief, head of the relief team. This is what you have to write. Examine the qualities of a public servant which will be required to manage the situation. What are the qualities that are required? As I said, emotional intelligence, motivational skills, communication skills, visionary skills, the skills of coordination. Then you require qualities like empathy. You must be able to empathize with the problems of sufferings of the people, and selflessness, commitment to public service. These are all the qualities that you are expected to have. Next, let us look at other case studies. Honesty and uprightness are the hallmarks of a civil servant. Civil servants possessing these qualities are considered as a backbone of any strong organization. In the line of duty, they take various decisions at times some bona fide mistakes. They commit some bona fide mistakes also. As such, as long as such decisions are not taken intentionally and do not benefit personally, the officer cannot be said to be guilty. Though such decisions may at times lead to unforeseen adverse consequences in the long term. In the recent past, a few instances have surfaced wherein the civil servants have been implicated for bona fide mistakes. They have been often prosecuted, even imprisoned. These instances have greatly rattled the moral fiber of civil servants. How does this trend affect the functioning of civil services? What measures can be taken to ensure that honest civil servants are not implicated for bona fide mistakes on their part? Justify. The only thing is that I gave this question as part of section A. They gave it as for case studies. Otherwise, the same thing. In section A, I gave the question in 2 lines. Now they have so much of free time, they gave it in 10 lines. What is the problem here? What is the problem here? This question is about basically Prevention of Corruption Act 1988. Prevention of Corruption Act 1988. We are talking about the section 13C and D. Those who attend our ethics classes, they know all these things. Because I have done it in the classes, I gave the same thing in the examination also. So what is the problem here? The problem here, that is what we study in public administration also. The problem here is that as a civil servant, when you take a decision, you do not know the outcome of the decision. Because as we study, decisional outcomes are always related to future. Decisional outcomes are always related to future. Now, if the decisional outcome turns out to be wrong, then the government will punish you. That is where you have institutions like CAG, CBI and courts. It is said that, as the question says, how does this trend affect the functioning of civil services? That is what we study. We say that in the last few years, we have seen policy paralysis in administration. We have seen policy paralysis in administration because of these 3 C's: CAG, CBI and courts. You are taking a decision as a civil servant. Tomorrow, the decision is wrong. It has caused loss to the exchequer, treasury of the government. The government had lost crores of rupees because of the decision that you have taken in the past. Immediately CAG will find fault with you. CBI starts inquiry. and ultimately court will punish you. Why? Because the problem, as I said, with these sections in PCA, Prevention of Corruption Act. What is the problem here? The problem here is about differentiating between what is a bona fide mistake. Differentiate between what is a bona fide mistake and what is a crime committed with malified intention. Differentiating between with a crime committed with malified intention. What is a bona fide mistake and what is a crime committed with malified intention? Again, when you study about CAG, the criticism against CAG is that CAG does not have the ability to differentiate between what is a bona fide mistake and what is a crime committed with malified intention. That is the reason why CAG will find fault with every civil servant, who commits a mistake, who commits a wrong. And as we study in administration, every civil servant has the right to commit honest mistakes. Every civil servant has the right to commit honest mistakes. Now, what is the trend that has been observed is that because of the inability of the CAG courts and the judiciary to differentiate between a bona fide mistake and a malified crime, they are punishing even honest bureaucrats also. They are punishing honest bureaucrats also. When honest bureaucrats are punished like this, what is happening? Then the bureaucrats have stopped taking decisions. They are not taking any decisions. Why? Because whatever the decision they take today, they will be questioned by these organizations tomorrow. If you don't take any decision, there is no accountability. The moment you take any decision, you are made accountable, which is resulting in what we call policy paralysis. Policy paralysis. Right? Then once you know the problem, what is the solution? The solution was offered by PC Hota Committee on Civil Services Reforms. PC Hota Committee. As I keep on saying, whether you like it or not, for ethics paper you need very good knowledge of public administration. The 10th report of second ERC on civil services should be Bhagavad Gita or Bible or Quran for you, for your ethics paper, along with report on ethics in governance. All the questions are directly taken only from these reports. PC Hota Committee for the first time talked about this problem, which was repeated by second ERC. What is the solution they have suggested? We must amend sections 13C and 13D of Prevention of Corruption Act 1988. We must amend these sections. What is the amendment? The amendment is simple. Civil servants should not be punished for corruption in case they commit any bona fide mistakes. They should not be punished for corruption. So what are we saying here? What we are saying here is that you are taking a decision. You are taking a decision which ultimately led to financial loss to the government. Financial loss to the government. But the decision taken by you, it did not benefit you. You have not benefited out of the decision. That means you have not taken any bribes. It did not benefit your family members or friends or associates. You did not indulge in nepotism or favoritism. But it has caused financial damage to the government. For these kind of mistakes, you should not be punished. That is what the amendment section 13C and 13D. Why? Because why it has become controversial? Because in H.C. Gupta, the coal secretary, who was very honest, he was sent to jail. He was sent to jail because of allocation of coal mines. He had given suggestion to the Prime Minister, who was the coal minister also at that point of time, Manmohan Singh. And he had given suggestion that the coal mines should be given to the private sector instead of public sector enterprises. And it caused financial damage to the government, because whenever public sector is there, preference should always be given to public sector. So a case was filed against him and he was sent to jail, even though he did not benefit financially out of the decision. That is when recently the government amended this section 13(1)(c) and D of Prevention of Corruption Act 1988. And what is the outcome? Immediately H.C. Gupta was released, and the Supreme Court has said that, has come out with the judgment that he was innocent. Why? Because he did not benefit out of the decision. You have, as a civil servant, the right to make honest mistakes. Otherwise, there cannot be any governance. What is the meaning of the term governance? Governance means taking decisions and implementing those decisions. As a civil servant, you are expected to take decisions. Some of them can be right, some of them can be wrong. But that cannot stop you from taking decisions. That is what the question is about. Next, an apparel manufacturing company having large number of women employees was losing sales due to various factors. The company hired a reputed marketing executive who increased the volume of sales within a short span of time. However, some unconfirmed reports came up regarding his indulgence in sexual harassment at workplace. After some time, a woman employee launched a formal complaint to the management against marketing executive about sexually harassing her. Faced with the company's indifference in not taking cognizance of her grievances, she lodged an FIR with police. Realizing the sensitivity and gravity of the situation, the company called the woman employee to negotiate. In that, she was offered a hefty sum of money to withdraw the complaint and file the FIR also, and also given writing that marketing executive is not involved in the case. Identify the ethical issues involved in the case. What options are available to the women employee? Again, unfortunately, the same question I have given. You can see that in the next page, the last page, 7th question. Can you see that? A woman is sexually harassed by a top-level senior executive in a large company. UPSC changed words to say that they have not copied. She sues the company, and during the settlement discussion, she is often offered an extremely large amount of money. In the agreement, she is required to confirm that the executive did nothing wrong. And after the agreement is signed, the woman is prohibited from discussing anything in the public also. As I said, both of us have taken from same source, UPSC and myself. We can easily, because every year one case study is all about women. Out of 6 case studies, reservations are there here also for women. Okay. Government may not be implementing 33% reservation for women in parliament, but they are definitely implementing reservations in UPSC case studies. And every year the same case study they have to ask: sexual harassment at workplace. So let us look at what is the solution here. Identify, again, if you look at what are the issues of ethics, integrity and law posed in the case study. That is what I have given. Identify the ethical issues involved in the case. What are the options available to the woman? The same thing. What are the options available to the woman employee? So coming back here. So what are the ethical issues? The same case study, similar case study was asked 3 times in the last 6 years. Similar case study. It was asked 3 times in the last 6 years. So what are the ethical issues involved here? First issue here is morality versus efficiency. Morality versus efficiency. The second ethical issue we are talking about here is, again, you go back to Immanuel Kant. using other people as instruments. We are using other people as a means or instruments to satisfy our selfish ends. To satisfy our selfish ends. Here, third ethical issue involved here is dignity, prestige, honor, respect and independence of women in our society. What we call it as self-esteem. Self-esteem. Fourth issue here is, fourth issue here is the instruments used by management, the means or instruments used by management to buy silence of a woman. To buy silence of a woman. As the question says, she lodged FIR and the company called women employee. She was offered hefty sum of money to withdraw the complaint so that they want to protect the marketing executive. Fifth ethical issue here is safety and security of women at a workplace. Safety and security of women at workplace. Sixth issue here we are talking about is, we are talking about all the time more participation of women in development. More participation of women in development. We are also talking about gender empowerment. But the problem here is that our society, which is parochial in nature, is not willing to accept. Our society, which is parochial in nature, is not willing to accept women as equal partners in the development process. It is not willing to accept women as equal partners. Seventh issue here is that we are talking about here is a ethical issue that we are talking about is the patriarchal mindset of men in society. Patriarchal mindset of men in society who treat women as objects of pleasure. So these are all the ethical issues we are talking about here. Then if you want, you can write one more about corporate governance. Corporate governance. What do we say? We say that ethics of business is more important than business ethics. All these things you will be studying in your ethics paper. Ethics of business is more important than business ethics. Business ethics only talk about profit maximization. Ethics of business talk about the means adopted to maximize profits also. Ethics of business is more important than business ethics. Now, what options are available to the women employee? What are the options available to her? Two options. You don't have to worry about too many options. Two options. One is accept the compensation, withdraw the complaint and remain silent. Right? Accept the compensation, withdraw the complaint and remain silent. Right? Accept the offer. What is the merit and what is the demerit? The merit is that she is getting good amount of money. It can ensure her financial security, and it can also help her, to get more promotions in the organization, because she will be in the good books of their management. She will become a loyal employee. What is the demerit? What is the demerit? Her actions, in this case, are neither moral nor legal. Why legal, not legal? According to law, protection of women at workplace, if they face any kind of harassment, they have this fundamental right to approach judiciary. If you don't protect yourself, who will protect you? That is what. Second, reject the offer. What is the merit? If she is rejecting the offer, what is the merit? She has shown all qualities that are needed. Courage of conviction, and perseverance, which are needed, and she is willing to face the consequences also. She is also willing to face the consequences. She can be a role model for others by fighting her case, by not coming under the pressure of the top management. What is the demerit? She can be removed from the organization. She can lose her job also. So what should she do? She should always select the second option, so that once she is removed, she can start preparing for UPSC. No, she should select the second option. Why? Because that is where you have to say, this is what we study in ethics. If there is a fight between good and evil, if you remain silent, it means that you are siding yourself on the side of evil. And in this case, she was the victim also. She cannot remain silent. Today it happened to her. Tomorrow it can happen to anyone else. If she remains silent, it results in more degeneration. And if she remains silent, other employees male employees in the organization, they also believe that it is their right to, molest women in the organization. As long as they are efficient, the organization will protect them. Right? And that is what they are sending wrong kind of signals. Her actions are morally, legally, ethically are wrong. That is the reason why she should fight. She should fight, and she should get the justice so that she can become a role model for others also. That is what you have to write. And then what are the long-term solutions? That is what we study in ethics. Every organization must implement this guidelines, Vishaka guidelines for protection of women at workplaces. Next, come to the next question. In a modern democratic polity, there is a concept of political executive and permanent executive. Elected people's representatives from the political executive and bureaucracy from the permanent executive. Ministers frame policy decisions and bureaucrats educate them. In the initial days after independence, the relation between political executive and permanent executive were characterized by mutual understanding, respect and cooperation without encroaching upon each other's domain. However, in the subsequent decades, the situation has changed. There are instances of the political executive insisting upon the permanent executive to follow its agenda. Respect for an appreciation of an upright bureaucrat has declined. There is an increasing tendency among the political executive to get involved in routine administrative matters such as transfers, postings, etc. Under this scenario, there is a definitive trend towards the politicization of bureaucracy. The rising materialism and acquaintanceness in social life has also severely impacted upon the ethical values of both permanent and political executive. What are the consequences of politicization of bureaucracy? Discuss. Again, this is straight away taken from public administration. As I keep on saying, those who have good knowledge of public administration are the ones who can do very well in ethics paper. As this is what we study in public administration, what do we say? We talk about a balanced polity. Max Weber talked about. What did he say? There is clear-cut division of work between political executive and permanent executive. Political executive is responsible for policy formulation and bureaucracy for implementation. Political executive must take into consideration values while formulating policies, whereas bureaucracy must implement those policies strictly according to rules and regulations. And bureaucracy is expected to provide unbiased, rational, meritorious suggestions to political executive. And whereas political executive should not interfere in the functioning of bureaucracy. That is what we say. For this, you have to read again second UPSC report on civil services. One full chapter is devoted to this politician-civil servant relationship. And what we have said is that, again, if you remember in our ethics or public administration classes, we repeated the same thing. What we have said is that in the initial days of our independence, for the first 2 decades, the political culture was dominated by values and bureaucratic culture was dominated by Weberian norms. It resulted in what is called balanced polity. Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, he said that I want my secretary to say no to what I say. He is being paid to say no and not to say yes. Political executive expected bureaucracy to be completely impartial, unbiased and meritorious in their suggestions. It required honesty and courage of conviction on the part of a political executive. Now, but from 1967 onwards, we have seen degeneration in our politics, wherein political culture started dominated by emotions, sentiments, wherein the second generation of politicians entered into politics not to serve the society but to maximize their self-interest, as the question says. And similarly, bureaucracy also has changed. The bureaucracy which was there during the colonial times had been replaced with a new set of bureaucrats who are willing to sacrifice their independence, impartiality and credibility for few positions within the government. And the situation has completely deteriorated during the time of Indira Gandhi, when she had given a call for committed bureaucracy during emergency. She felt that bureaucracy was not doing enough to realize the objectives of her welfare state. She wanted bureaucracy to be committed to the ideology of the ruling political party in power than to the ideals of the constitution, which ultimately led to politicization of bureaucracy. By 1990s, as we studied, it resulted in a complete politicization of civil services even at the state level also, resulting in what we call unbalanced polity in the form of politicization of civil services. Both bureaucracy and political executive joined hands together to exploit ordinary citizens. And because we have colonial structures, the exploitation had become much more easier because of complete secrecy in administration, complete absence of accountability mechanisms, and huge amount of discretionary powers in the hands of political executive and bureaucracy, which resulted in crony capitalism, unholy nexus between political executive, bureaucracy and businessmen. And what is the solution? What is the solution? We have said. Again, the solutions you have to go to second ERC report on civil services. What are the solutions? First and foremost, what we have said is that the transfers, postings, promotions, suspensions should not be in the hands of political executive. That is what we call depoliticization of bureaucracy. And it should be given to a central civil services board. And this central civil services board, consisting of senior most bureaucrats, should decide on these matters strictly on the basis of what we call objective performance evaluation. Second ERC recommended performance evaluation and management systems, which we call it as a 360-degree performance evaluation also. This should become the basis of transfers, promotions and everything. Another important recommendation we have made, or for that matter second ERC has made, is we must replace ex post accountability with ex ante accountability. Ex post accountability with ex ante accountability. Otherwise, what is the situation? it will result in complete degeneration of society due to this unholy nexus between political, executive and bureaucracy, which has already resulted in the failure of development administration, because that can be seen in the form of high levels of corruption in our society. And bureaucracy, bureaucrats are willing to dance to the tunes of their political masters for few positions within the government. And we also suggested one more reform. There should be better grievance redressal mechanism within the government in the form of this administrative tribunals, in the form of vigilance commissions and vigilance cells. They should take up the cases in a time-bound manner and come out with solutions. Another solution, as we have said, is this Prevention of Corruption Act, amendments to PCA. All those things you have to write for this question. Next, in one of the districts of a frontier state, narcotics menace has become rampant. What is the state? Punjab. Yes. Okay. If they had mentioned Punjab, at least that would have given them some kind of self-esteem also. Out of 29 states in India, UPSC mentioned only our state. They would feel good also. They are not getting any credit for what they are doing. Okay. So coming back here, this has resulted in money laundering, mushrooming of poppy farming, arms smuggling and near stalling of education. The system is on the verge of collapse. The situation has been further worsened by unconfirmed reports that the local politicians as well as some senior police officers are also providing the surreptitious patronage to the drug mafia. Again Punjab. At that point of time, a woman police officer known for her skills in handling such situations is appointed as a superintendent of police to bring a situation to normalcy. If you are the same police officer, identify the various dimensions of the crisis. Based on your understanding, suggest measures to deal with the crisis. And if you are a man, you have to undergo gender transformation, because the question says that you are a woman police officer. Again, UPSC is discriminating against poor innocent men. Okay. Look at this. 2 case studies only for women. Rampant reservations in UPSC. Who will think about the endangered species men? So, coming back here, let us see. If say that if you are the same police officer, identify the various dimensions of the crisis. What is the reason why we are facing this drug menace? What are the reasons? You have to talk from all dimensions: political dimension, economic dimension, administrative dimension, social and cultural dimension, from the dimension of a family. You have to talk from all the dimensions. And of course, all of them are interrelated. So, why people are taking to drugs? Those who have the experience, and they can come and rescue me here. Because if I have to give answers to all these questions, it is based on only my theoretical knowledge, not on the basis of any practical experience. Those who have the experience, their time has come. Every dog has its day. So, why do people take to drugs? Pardon? Internal peace. My God. Yes, sir. That is what experience. That is what experience is all about. We think that there are so many other reasons. We never thought that this can be the reason also. So why do people take the drugs? First, in a society, it starts as a fashion. It starts as a fashion, especially in the school level itself. If you look at all these, top schools in our country, top schools not in terms of education, but in terms of rich, rich spoiled brats, who are studying there, they take up to drugs as a part of what is called a fashion statement. It starts from a childhood onwards. If you are taking drugs, you feel that you have become a superhero. You feel that you have arrived in the society. You have some kind of self-esteem. Second, why do they take drugs? Peer pressure. Your friends are doing it. If you do not do it, you will be treated differently in your group. Peer pressure. Third reason why why these drugs? What are the other reasons you think? Please remember, this question was asked in your internal security paper last year. The same questions, as I keep on saying, knowledge is the same. That is the reason why every year the UPSC keep on asking the same questions in different papers of your general studies. What are the other reasons why? What are the other reasons why? Psychological states like depression. You want to get out of depression because it gives you artificial high, as he said, peace, internal peace. Okay. So, that is the advantage of having experienced people. Okay. Next, fourth reason why? Availability. You will take it because they are available. Right? Fifth reason, psychological. You want to experiment. As we have said in one of the previous questions, an unexamined life is not worth living. You have taken Socrates seriously. You want to examine. You have taken Socrates seriously. Experimentation. Sixth reason why we have this drug menace, as we have said, this unholy nexus between drug mafia, politicians, bureaucrats and police. Unholy nexus between drug mafia, politicians, bureaucrats and police. Next, another reason why, poor conviction rate. Even if they are caught, they are released. Poor conviction rate. There is drug lords in a poor conviction rate. Poor conviction rate by investigating agencies and judiciary. This is another. Next, global links. Dr. Marxia have global links. In India, we have what do we call it as? This golden crescent, golden triangle. Yes. And of course, policies of government also. Policies of government. For example, the government, allows poppy cultivation. Why? The government wants us to believe innocently that it is needed for medicinal purposes. That is the policy of the government. Yes, in Assam and most part of the Northeast, it is allowed legally because the government is so innocent that it says that it is required for medicinal purposes. It takes place in India in a large scale, very large scale. Thousands of hectares of land is used for poppy cultivation. Unfortunately, this is what India is. These are all the reasons. So, this is the various dimensions of the crisis. Again, another reason you can say is that this economic recession has created unemployment. It made people to find solace in drugs, to find comfort in drugs. They wanted to get out of the difficult realities of life. Economic crisis. And interestingly, other thing also is responsible. Economic boom also created this drug crisis. Why? Because thanks to this economic boom, especially in states like Himachal and Punjab, people have huge amounts of money. They don't know how to spend the money. That is what Mahatma Gandhi called, wealth without work. When you have so much of wealth without work, you don't know how to spend that money. That is the reason why again you take up to drugs. You have to write all these dimensions: political, administrative, economic, social, cultural, psychological, all these dimensions. Suggest measures to deal with the crisis. Once you know the problem, as I always say, you know what the solution also. So what are the measures to deal with this kind of crisis? What should be done? Obviously, when the problem is multidimensional, solution also has to be multidimensional. So, as the question says, imagine yourself as the woman police officer. Imagine. Okay? Since neither you are a woman nor a police officer, imagine. And you don't know whether to laugh or cry, with this kind of questions by UPSC. But again, you cannot question them. So coming back here, imagine yourself as the police officer, and what are the solutions that you will suggest? First and foremost, you talk about preventive measures, then curative measures. What are the preventive measures? First, identify the sources of this drug. Identify the sources of this drug. Second, ban this poppy cultivation. Even for medicinal purposes also, it is not required. The government is deceiving itself when it says that government is allowing poppy cultivation only for medicinal purposes, whereas 90% of it is only used for producing drugs. The government is always under the misconception, under the innocence that they are allowing poppy cultivation only for medicinal purposes. Do you know what are the places where this cultivation takes place on a large scale? That is what I always say. General studies preparation is all about knowing about your country, all aspects. In the heart of the country also, if it is northeast, you don't mind. In the heart of the country, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Maharashtra, Telangana, in the forests, thousands of hectares of land, tribals as well as Naxalites. And if they are not doing it, police will come and ask them to do it. Everything is done in the name of rule of law. Okay, that is where the problem is. So the second solution you will suggest is ban completely poppy cultivation. Third solution, ensure strict punishment for those who are involved in this drug trade. Fourth solution, the government must differentiate between suppliers and consumers. You cannot punish all of them. If you are a first time, if you are a first time drug involved, if you are for the first time involved in drug consumption, you cannot be punished in the same manner as that of a supplier. If you are keeping the drugs for your own consumption, the punishment cannot be as severe as when you are a drug supplier. You have to differentiate between the people. The government has to look at those people who are consuming drugs with much more in a more humane manner compared to those people who supply and produce these drugs. It must ensure strict punishment for those people who are involved in production and supply. Whereas for those who are consuming them, the government can have a lenient view of these things. Why? Because as we keep on saying, every person has the right to commit mistakes. We have to learn from our mistakes. So let people commit mistakes first. So that is what an unexamined life is not worth living. So when are you starting? When are you starting? So coming back here, what are the other steps? Next one is creating awareness. Creating awareness among the people, especially from childhood onwards. And the government must ensure that these schools, colleges are kept a close vigil so that the government will come to know about these consumption habits of people, children there. Next, what else? The government should also focus on drug rehabilitation centers. That is what Punjab state government is talking about now. Rehabilitation centers. There is a film also. You know what it is. The title of the film ends with Punjab. Yes. So that is what that is the reason why even Punjab state government also took very serious note of these things. With those kind of films, you are only popularizing them, right? So you are, branding them as a, some section of society as a drug addiction. It is not true. Not everyone in Punjab takes drugs. At least 1% don't take. So coming back here. So that is what the focus should be on: rehabilitation in both mental and physical aspects. That is what as a superintendent of police you will also do. Next one is you will break this nexus between politicians, police officers and bureaucrats. That is very, very important. Breaking the nexus. So this is what you will do as a solution to this problem. You have to talk about all these things. As I said, from all dimensions. You have to promote what is called this family system. Why do people take to drugs? When they feel alone, when they are depressed, that is when they take to drugs. They need that psychological support. That is why Punjab state government is talking about helplines. Whenever people are depressed, you call us. We make sure that you will become more depressed. Okay? Helplines. Okay, that is what. Similarly, the government also is including this, drugs in the academic curriculum from the childhood onwards to tell the people about, the negative impact of these drugs. So it is said that when the government recently banned, these e-cigarettes, it can result in drugs. Now e-cigarettes are not there, children will look for drugs. That is what they said. That is what we say unintended consequences of public policies. Which one is much more less harmful, e-cigarettes or drugs? Both of them are equally bad. Which one is relatively bad? So that is what, you cannot expect people to be perfect human beings. All of us, all of them have weaknesses. So what the government has to do is that the government has to take proactive. There is what we study in ethics paper. Positive reinforces and negative reinforces. As part of negative reinforces, you are talking about ensuring conviction for people, coming out with strict laws, rules and regulations, ensuring better policing, breaking the nexus. Positive reinforces means having helplines and then rehabilitation centers and promoting family values and ensuring that people do not become alone. That all the things that you have to write as part of this question. Next, in recent times, there has been an increasing concern in India to develop effective civil services ethics, code of conduct, transparency measures, ethics and integrity systems and anti-corruption agencies. In view of this, there is need being felt to focus on the three specific areas which are directly relevant to the problems of internalizing integrity and ethics in civil services. These are as follows: anticipating specific threats to ethical standards and integrity in civil services, strengthening ethical competence of civil servants, developing administrative processes and practices which promote ethical values and integrity in civil services. Suggest institutional measures to address the above three issues. Again, this question requires practical knowledge of public administration. The question looks easy, on the face of it, but it may not be so easy. So what the question says is that in the recent times, in India, we are focusing more on what is called governance reforms. As part of these governance reforms, our focus is more on civil services reforms. Because governance reforms are possible only when there are reforms in the functioning of civil services. And the focus of the civil services reforms, as we keep on saying, is to ensure transparency, accountability, decentralization, participation. Transparency, accountability, decentralization and participation. To reduce corruption and so on and so forth. Now, the question here is, how can we ensure these things in the functioning of our civil servants? The question says that, there are three issues here, to realize these objectives, to ensure transparency, accountability, participation and decentralization. There are three issues. One is anticipating specific threats to ethical standards and integrity. Anticipating specific threats to ethical standards and integrity in the civil services. What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? When we know what it is, we can easily come out with solutions. What do you mean by anticipating specific threats to ethical standards and integrity in civil services? So, if I have to come out with any institutional reform, I should know what are the threats to ethical standards and integrity in civil services. What do you mean by that? It means that what are the challenges related to probity in governance? What are the challenges related to probity in governance? What do you mean by that? What are the challenges to ensure honest, efficient, transparent, decentralized governance? Honest, efficient, transparent and decentralized governance. So what are the challenges here? First and foremost, the challenge comes from the society itself. The challenge comes from the society itself. What is the challenge that is coming from the society? When the societies are materialistic societies, when societies are consumerist societies, when societies give importance to only success, when societies gives importance to only success, is it possible for civil servants to be honest, selfless, empathetic and impartial in their functioning? Is it possible for civil servants to be honest, selfless, empathetic and impartial in their functioning? Is it possible for them to ensure what is called probity in governance? Is it possible? No. Why? Because civil servants also come from the same society. Give the example here. For example, as a civil servant, you have to implement laws, rules and regulations related to dowry, prohibition of dowry. And the first thing you think about after getting into IAS is how much dowry I will get. That is what the first point talks about. Why? Because you are living in the same society wherein it is considered taking dowry is part of traditions and customs. Part of traditions and customs. When you are living in that kind of society, is it possible once you become a district collector to punish those people who are taking dowry? Is it possible? Then take other case. You are coming from a society wherein women are always treated as secondary grade citizens in the family as well as in the society. Tomorrow you become an IAS officer and you are given the responsibility of implementing developmental schemes for women. Will you be able to do it with that kind of attitude that you have? Obviously not. You will not be able to do it. Why? Because your upbringing. As I said, this society, our present society gives only importance to success. It never gives importance to honesty. It gives only importance to success, but never to honesty. So, in those kind of societies, if you are honest civil servant, will you get any kind of recognition in the society? You are called useless civil servant because you don't know how to live. That is what another problem. Second, strengthening the ethical competence of civil servants. Under these circumstances, the second thing is, under these circumstances, when you are facing so many challenges here, how to strengthen the ethical competence of civil servants. That means, how to make civil servants honest, selfless, honest, selfless, with love and compassion, and also, make sure that they have a service motive also. How can we ensure? Wherein the society gives only importance to position, power, money and materialistic things. How can we improve ethical competence of civil servants? That is what the second point, strengthening the ethical competence of civil servants. How to make them ethical in their behavior as well as functioning. That is what the second thing you talk about. Third, developing a, yes. See, that is what, both first and second, all of them are interrelated. The first part is about challenges, second part is about changes. How to inculcate values. Third part, developing administrative processes and processes which promote ethical values and integrity in civil services. That is what, coming out with the structures, procedures and practices which promote these ethical values. Coming out with structures, practices and processes which promote these ethical values. These three are the challenges. So first one is, the first challenge is, what are the specific threats to integrity? What are the specific threats to integrity? As we have said, we talked about what are specific threats. These materialistic societies, consumeristic societies, patriarchal societies, wherein only success is given importance. People are, that is what we study in an ethics paper. What we say is that, what is the biggest change that has taken place after industrial revolution in terms of values? What is the biggest change that has taken place? Ends have become more important than means. That is what you have to write. The biggest challenge here is that in the materialistic societies, ends have become more important than means. That means the end, the ultimate objective of becoming rich, retaining power, ensuring popularity, retaining positions is much more important than the means you have adopted to realize those ends. Nobody looks at what are the means you have adopted, as long as you are able to realize the objectives. A businessman, a successful businessman is called successful only when he earns huge amount of profits, huge amount of wealth. Nobody looks at what are the means he has used. Similarly, who do you call a successful politician? A politician who reaches positions of power and retains position for longer periods of time, irrespective of the means he has adopted. The basic problem with our societies, as we study in our ethics paper, is in the present day societies, goodness is equated to success, whereas goodness is completely has a different meaning in otherwise. When you say good businessman, when you say that Mukesh Ambani is a good businessman, it means he is a successful businessman. When you say that Narendra Modi is a good politician, it means that he is a successful politician. When you say that Sachin Tendulkar is a good cricketer, it does not mean that he is a good human being. He is a successful cricketer. That is the basic challenge in our present day societies. So once we know all the problems, what are the institutional measures that you can suggest? So what are the measures that you can suggest? Again, this is what Second IAS suggested in its report on ethics in governance. What are the measures? First and foremost, what you have to do is that you have to implement multidimensional reforms in the society. You have to implement multidimensional reforms. Why? Because as we keep on saying, administrative system, that is what we study in public administration. Administrative system is a subsystem of the entire system. Fredericks. So you cannot reform bureaucracy unless you reform other systems. So the first thing is that you need to implement political reforms, economic reforms, governance reforms, social reforms, and financial reforms. You have to implement all these reforms so that these governance reforms, civil services reforms also can be successful. As we have said, these civil servants come from the same society. In the society it is accepted norm that the more dowry you take, the more successful you will be called. In those circumstances, can you expect the civil servants to be ethical in their behavior? Because they are influenced by the society. So you have to reform the society, reform the ethical system of societies, reform political systems. Because at the end of the day, the civil services reforms have to be implemented by politicians only. Only they have to take the decisions related to implementation of civil services reforms. Next, how to strengthen the ethical competence of civil servants. This is what again we study in ethics paper. How to change the attitudes, values and behaviors. First have role models. Have role models, of those people who have become successful in true sense of the term success. In true sense of the term success. If you become cabinet secretary, it does not mean that you have become successful. If you are able to do well, for the people, that is when you are called a successful civil servant. First have right kind of role models so that you can improve their ethical competence. Second, give them sensitivity training. Give them sensitivity training. At present, the training focuses only on structural and procedural aspects, but not on behavioral aspects. Third, to improve their ethical competence, focus on value education, moral education from the childhood onwards. The basic problem with our education system is that it produces professionals but not human beings. If you are a good human being, you will automatically become a good civil servant also. Focus on changing the education system with more emphasis to values. Next, coming back to developing administrative processes and practices which promote ethical values and integrity. So what are the administrative processes and practices you are talking about? Citizen charters, social audits, RTI, right to information, outcome budgets, citizen charters, social audits, RTI, outcome budgets, e-governance, then empowering local self-governments by giving real powers to local self-government as part of 73rd, 74th Amendment. Next, changing performance appraisal systems. Performance evaluation systems. At present, how the performance is evaluated in civil services? How it is evaluated? It is evaluated in terms of their ability to implement rules and regulations, not in terms of their ability to realize outcomes. Performance evaluated in terms of their ability to implement rules and regulations, but not in terms of their ability to realize outcomes. Change performance evaluation systems. Performance evaluation systems. Next, what are the other reforms? Depoliticize functioning of civil services. Depoliticize the functioning of civil services. How can you depoliticize the functioning of civil services? With the recommendations we have given in the earlier question. Depoliticize the functioning of civil services. Next, code of conduct and code of ethics. What second year called it as public services code. Code of conduct and code of ethics. What second year called it as a public services code. So this is what you have to write in this question paper. As I keep on saying, your ethics paper notes, and it is not about talking about other things. You can find almost each and every answer to every question in our class notes. Those who have attended, they know these things. Our class notes is only around, I think, without case studies is around 70-80 pages. And if you put it in printed format, it is only 30 pages. If you are reading anything beyond that, it is criminal. It is a criminal waste of time. You can watch even Shah Rukh Khan movies also to spend your time. As I keep on saying, this paper requires only one thing. You should know what to study. And it requires more of application and very good in-depth knowledge of public administration. Very, very important. Apart from our class notes, what you can read is, as I said, two reports. One is second has report on ethics in governance. Second one is civil services. And one or two more books also. You can read Vinod Roy, former CAG. Vinod Roy. He had written a beautiful book called Not Just an Accountant, wherein he talked about all the case studies which you see in an ethics paper. Not Just an Accountant. Very good book, Vinod Roy, wherein he talked about the administrative problems faced by civil servants. Vinod Roy, Not Just an Accountant. And one more book which you can read is Mahatma Gandhi's autobiography. You don't require Guru Charan Das and all these people. They are at best stupid, at worst idiotic. Okay. You don't need to read all of them. So, Mahatma Gandhi's autobiography, My Experiments with the Truth. It will teach you about essence of life. It will teach you all the civil services values. At the end of the day, as I told you, it does not require more than 7 to 10 days of preparation. You will definitely score above 150 marks. Easily. Easily. Or if you cannot read any of those things, you can read our class notes. Nothing else. And you will come to know about these things tomorrow when we discuss essay paper also. Tomorrow, 11 o'clock, we will discuss essays. All those things.